guys, and welcome to my first official video on Star Wars Galaxy Heroes. My name is Zanik, and today I want to talk with you guys about a new event I've been thinking about for the game. First, a bit of backstory. For those who don't know, about a year ago, another popular Star Wars game, Star Wars Force Collection, a mobile card game by Konami, shut down its servers due to EA acquiring the exclusive Star Wars license. This was quite disheartening to the many fans the game had amassed, as it was one of the few mobile games that really promoted player-on-player interactivity. One major part of the game was the Legions at War special event that happened once every 3 weeks or so, in which a legion, clan or guild in other games, would get together and battle with other legions using skill, strategy, teamwork, and just a little bit of luck. In this video, I'll be running through the mechanics that I believe would work well within Galaxy Heroes' model, which would be a fun and interesting, while also a rewarding experience for all players involved. If you're not interested in the mechanics, I'll give a TLDL explanation at the end, with a time mark in the description, as well as a link to the Wikipedia page explaining the basic mechanics for you to jump to. Otherwise, feel free to stick around and let's talk some fun. I'll be going quite in depth today, but for a more in-depth view at how Legions of War ran, you can search it up on YouTube. Revan the Legend has a lot of really good content on it, but today I want to talk with you guys about how I think, in honor of the 1-year anniversary of the Death Force Collection, CG could make not only a really fun event that promoted player-on-player interactivity, but also promotes guild interactivity and guild versus guild relationships, providing perspective of how strong your guild really is, as well as introduce several long-anticipated characters, make some ships worth getting, as at the moment, ship battles is probably the least popular event in the game, and just generally improve the game as a whole. Now, original Legions at War had several factors to it. You'll begin with choosing your flagship as a clan, and then upgrading the subsystems, namely shields, health, turbo lasers, anti-aircraft cannons, and repair at the cost of individual members' credits. This is a feature that could easily come back, with each clan selecting one of, let's say, 12 flagships at the beginning of the event. The reason I say 12 is because it would give you 2 ships from each faction from each movie time period to choose from. However, it could easily be more or less, depending on how you wanted to look at it. This is a different way to what Force Collection had, where you had options based on your guild's level. But this is kind of the issue with Galaxy Heroes' differences, but since you don't have a guild level, there are other ways to work it out. One way I can see to work it out would be to have it based off the previous Territory Wars ranking. So, based on your prize structure due to your guild GP, as well as whether or not you won or lost the previous battle. Or alternatively, with the territory battles, you have the amount of stars that each guild earns. It could be based off the amount of stars that your guild has earned previously or historically, or even just based on raids. How many times your guild has completed the Heroic Sith Triumvirate raid. So a guild that's completed Heroic Sith Triumvirate raid 100 times would have a better selection and stronger ships than a guild that's only just completed Heroic Rancor for the first time. But that's not to say that one of these clans would be matched up against one of the weaker clans. The same way that Territory Wars is calculated, there'd be a balance so that it wouldn't just be a complete whitewash. Now, if I had to list all the flagships possible for CG to use, I'd be here all day, but there's some pretty obvious candidates I can see, with some really iconic characters that have yet to appear in the game, which could then go on to be the rewards for the end of the battles as guild rewards, so that each participating character would earn an amount of shards of each character. So, the ships that I see as being the obvious choices would be, for the Old Republic, Admiral Yularen and Admiral Killian. The Separatists, General Kalani and Admiral Trench. For the Rebels, Crix Maydeen and Jan Dodonna, or even maybe Admiral Sato, to get the Rebels TV series a bit more content, and Sato was pretty much a boss. He went out, taking down an entire dreadnought with him. For the Empire, Admiral Piet, as I mentioned in my last video, I'd love to see him get introduced, and General Tage, the general who spoke against the Death Star in Episode 4. For the Resistance, Granny Leia and Admiral Statura. And for the First Order, General Hux and Captain Kennedy, also known as the Captain of the Dreadnought at the start of The Last Jedi, who would probably be one of the ship killers. Now, each ship would come with its strengths and weaknesses. While Piat's Executor would have strong turbo lasers for taking out the enemy's flagship and a high health pool, it would have weak anti aircraft cannons and weak shields, making it easy for ships in a bombing run to get close without decent ship defenses, as we saw in episode 6 with Arvel Krind. For Jandadana, alternatively, I'd have high shields and health, but low turbo lasers so that his ship versus ship capabilities would be lessened, and it would be more up to his pilots and his infiltrating team's skills to take out the enemy's ship. One of the great things I've always loved about Galaxy Heroes is its ability to reference the movies, the TV shows, and pretty much all Star Wars media with things like, Han shoots first in every battle. So little mechanics like this would be fun to play around with to make the ships really feel like they're being piloted by the admirals and commanders. Now, for the actual structure of the battles, it used to be 12 phases broken into 5-minute segments, which you need to get your ships prepared, your charging actions of subsystems, and do your boarding actions. However, unlike Galaxy Heroes, Force Collection battles could have the animation skipped. As such, it would be much quicker to get through the battle. I see several ways around this. First of all, I think I'd keep the 12 phases, however, I'd break them into 10-minute segments instead of 5. This would be split. The way to help make it that you want not spending all day playing this game, I'd have 2 rounds a day with 10 to 14 hour gaps in between the battles, with guilds able to choose their time periods by a guild vote just before the event started. Now, I understand that many people don't have 2 hours that they can dedicate to this at a time, even if it's first thing in the morning or last thing at night. But the way the battles work, it'll often not go into full time, and thanks to the player interactivity with your clan, you can duck out for a period and come back when it suits you. If you have to go and look after your kids, go to work, go to school, you can come in at the start of the battle, do your bit to help out your clan at the start, and then hopefully come back at some period, an hour and a half, an hour and 50 minutes even, come back just for the final phase. And just come back to help out your clan where you can, as hopefully they've held out, or maybe even won. The reason for 10 minutes is that it gives players a chance to battle with 2 enemies, and if they don't let the battles time out, they should be able to clear both. Average battles to around 3 minutes each, and that's even including the Revan vs. Revan mirror matches, and still have enough time to return to fulfill the other roles that they have to fulfill. And even if not, it makes it more interesting. Can you land the second battle in time? There's only 2.5 minutes left in the round. You've done your charging of the subsystems and what have you and beaten the first Revan team. But then suddenly you're coming up against a boss team. Are you going to have enough time to take out the full team? Or are you going to time out the round and make your entire attack run for nothing? It's strategic thought like this that would really bring clans together and really make it a vital part that communication, saying to your teammates, oh, would I be able to beat this guy with this team? And your clan being able to say, yeah, that should be an easy battle. No, you need to just end your run and log your points. Things like that. It would really bring clans together and make the game a lot more strategic in your thoughts. Now, as I said before, I estimate about 2 rounds a day across the span of about 6 days, giving a total of 12 rounds, which would make it about as long as territory battles, but require a little bit more commitment, as you can't just log in at the start of the day, drop your 3 battles in one phase, drop another 3 in the other, be done within an hour. It would require a little bit more interactivity, coming in the morning, coming in the evening, which is easy enough. First thing when you get up, drop in and do your battles. Last thing at night, or when you come in to claim your evening energy supplies, when you come in to check out what new events have started for the day. Whatever, you can start the next round then and go through and clear it through. Now, the mechanics of the actual battle fairly easy to pick up. Using your energy, I'd say squatted cantina, but who really knows? You generate energy cells. This could be as little as 2 or as many as 15 at the cost of 10 regular squad energy per generation, with a cap of 100 energy per phase of the round, with an additional 10 free energy cells being generated at the start of each turn. Now, these cells are a little bit more luck based, but there is also a degree of strategy in them as well. You might get how to assign what resources you have. Do you splurge in the first round and hope for a victory, or do you play a game of attrition and hope that your opponent wastes their resources early, smacks into your overshields, and just doesn't do any damage to your ship, leaves their shields down, and allows you to just go through for the quick indecisive victory? This is where clan communication again would come in hugely, as you'd have to coordinate with your clan. If half the clan's holding off on their resource spending, the other half is going absolutely hard on their spending. It's just going to result in a whole lot of, well, for lack of a better phrase, that sound that a balloon makes when it fuzzes around a room. Now, once you have your energy cells, you have several choices how you use your resources. The first option being ships. Now, unlike the content of Galaxy and Heroes at the moment, the ships have a different function in this. You load up one ship per player, and you don't actually use it in a battle. What you do is, once you've loaded your ship, all 50, assuming that your clan has 50 members, or less, depending on the size of your guild, of the ships launch at once, giving uh, giving your ship 50 of these power cells would have your ship at basic strength. So no additional boosts, no better evasion, no additional health, no whatever. But giving it 100 cells at the cap for each of these subsystems being 100, with the exception of shields and turbo lasers, which I'll get to in a minute. We'll give ships bonuses. So these bonuses would include things like, Houndstooth would have additional shields. The TIE Slicer would have additional evasion and attack. Ahsoka Tano's Jedi Starfighter would have, insane levels of attack, things like that. This would also allow for ships to have sort of more of a role within the thing. So unique ships, like things like the Houndstooth would be more of a tanky ship. The Millennium Falcon would be a ship destroyer. So you launch a Millennium Falcon, it's going to be more likely it's going to do huge amounts of damage to your enemy's ships than do damage to the enemy's ship. Sort of like how whenever Han came in, take out 3 TIE fighters at once, and then drop Darth Vader, who is more of a one-to-one ship killer, things like that. So it would make it what ships your guild would be launching become a lot more of a tactics game. You'd launch 20 Falcons for doing damage across the board to your enemy ships, 10 black ones designed for dodging the enemy's fire while doing mad damage to their flagship, 10 slave ones. Bobber's ship, having the seismic charges, which seems to do devastating damage to asteroids. Imagine what that would do to a flagship, but at the same time would be a little bit weaker against certain things. 5 Vader's TIE advances, as I said, maybe have Vader have something like, I'm going after the leader, cover me, as his special ability in this. So whatever the strongest ship was, Vader's TIE advance would do damage exclusively to that, and something like that. And then you'd have other ships like, the Ghost, have it, whenever you launch a Ghost, you also launch a Phantom, things like that. Little references to the shows and movies based on how the ships go. I reckon this would be a really fun way to bring ships into the limelight while not having to, sit through the ship battles, which aren't really that enjoyable compared to the general battles. The next part from there actually brings me to the next item on which your guild is able to charge, which is the anti-aircraft lasers. So these don't actually do damage to your enemy's flagship, but rather just do damage to the fighters coming in once the sort of ship versus ship skirmishes has happened. So these can be charged up to 100 energy cells, with full charge being able to wipe out most low evasion ships and most low health ships with evasion even. This is the last line of defense for your shields, and the ship against fighters, if they reach this stage, are able to launch a decimating attack on your flagship, lowering shields integrity, and can often be the difference between a win and a loss by just a few thousand damage. This would also encourage people to farm up more ships, maybe with factions receiving boosts with the corresponding flagship. So, Vader's TIE Advanced flying with Admiral Piet's Executor would have, a better chance of evading and doing huge damage to the enemy's ship, as well as also to the flagship. the ghost flying with Jandadana would, have a better chance of would nullify some of the damage, things like that. It would make it would make uh no it would make again the launch ideas have to be a lot more strategic, and deciding on what your flagship is at the start based on your guild's ship inventory would be an absolutely integral part of winning the battle. So with the shields, they act basically the same way as protection for your flagship as protection does for general characters. It's an additional shield to absorb some of the damage from enemy attacks. However, they also require charging with a soft maximum of 100 and a potential overcharge amount of 200% protection. So with this, if your shields get knocked down, they overheat for one turn, and if you charge them up to 200% protection, even if they do survive, they can't be charged for a turn as well, because you've been absolutely giving it its all. They need a second to cool down, or else the ship's going to fall apart. That sort of fun little role playing that you can do with it. Now, this comes with strategic value and risks. So when the first round starts, one of the most popular tactics of Star Wars Force Collections Legends of War was to fire your 300% turbo lasers, doing decimating damage. If you didn't overcharge your shields, you're basically wiped out turn one. So being able to read your opponent, go, okay, they're going to hold it for this round and go for round two fire, or not, they're firing this round, put it all into the shields, it would make a lot of swing and miss. And more often than not, you using your strategy, you'd be able to outmaneuver your opponent, either blocking their attack or getting around their shields because they've overcharged this turn, but nope, you firing it next turn. So once your ship takes a bit of a beating because your shields have fallen and the turbo lasers have gotten through, this is where your repair comes in. With players able to put energy up to an amount of damage done to repair the ship's cap based on what kind of ship you have. So, for example, I'd say Jans Dodana's ship would have the best repair, as he's the inventor of the A-Wing, probably has an idea of how to fix a ship. I get the repair function is kind of self-explanatory, but still, for those who want a bit of an in-depth, as I said. Now, turbo lasers, as I've mentioned like 10 times now, turbo lasers are what makes this event. They're designed to hit the opponent's ship for massive damage, requiring a cooldown period based on how many times 100 it's charged to a maximum of 300. A well-placed turbo laser can wipe out an enemy's ship in one hit. The difference I've been thinking about for this, instead of having your flagship being an exclusive source of damage, perhaps there could be a once per battle call. We can also call in your guild's flagships as a flanking fire of sort of arrangement. So each member of the guild can load in one of their ship v ship flagships, and it just sort of comes in, sort of like our the animation for Admiral Akbar's call to assist second ability. I can't remember what it's called at the moment. It comes in, has all sort of like that for each sort of faction, make the battle sort of a bit more epic. You'd call your ships in, they all of them would be firing on the flagships, and if they fire at the same time, reduce the damage of both volleys as they're attacking each other in a sort of like, a great fleet v fleet battle. But at the same time, lowering the damage of the fighters that have to try and dodge the turbos, or maybe even get destroyed by them. I'm not really 100% sure. I'm still trying to work out how to integrate the clan flagships, but it's pretty much the only aspect I don't have a solid vision of in this at the moment. But that's the whole reason for this video. I want this to be a discussion so that we as a community can work out the ways to make this a really fun event. It doesn't really matter, as the new capital ships are meant to be the focus. Now, let's move on to the PvP battles. For the PvP battles, to balance out the number of engagements each player can do, I'd have it that each player has to set a defensive squad that costs 5 Cantina energy per set, with each attack that the player does costing 10 Cantina energy. So 20 Cantina energy per round per player. As previously mentioned, each player can set 2 defensive squads, one for each possible attack phase. So there's 2 attack phases. So for the defensive, if the team survives, you don't need to set a new defensive team, similar to how Grand Arena is doing it at the moment. But if the squad gets wiped out, you can set a new squad, again, for the cost of 5 Cantina energy, or swap a team out. So let's say that you set Bounty Hunters, Bossk and Bob have survived, but Dengar and the rest have been wiped out. You're able to swap that team out and put a new, fresh team in to hold the line. If I might be so bold as to provide a new sort of mechanic, I've sort of been thinking about one called Back to Tanks. So this wasn't really needed for Force Collection because it didn't have Team Wipeout. But Back to Tanks would basically be that you'd be able to charge up, and for like, every 10 power cells, you'd get, 2.5 teams worth of characters. So, 12 characters per 10 power cells, with 20 teams coming back, or 25 teams coming back, or however many, due to the back to tanks healing them up per round. And otherwise, if a character gets wiped out, there's a 4-turn cooldown on them coming back. So they've had a chance to have a bit of a breather, have a Snickers, get back in the battle, and there's a sort of cool off period of 4 turns. And you could even make it a bit of fun, as we see in episode 8, General Leia's flagship clearly has some decent back to technology, so maybe have it that, she's able to bring back a few more extra teams, have it a bit cheaper. I'm not 100% sure. Now, for the offensive, this would cost 10 for the initial attack, with another 10 for a second attack. An interesting idea from Force Collection that I think would be absolutely fantastic would be random battles. So this means that for an offensive team, you can't just target the weakest team, same as what you do in territory wars at the moment. But for the defensive, you actually have to think about what teams you set in both areas. As when a player clicks start battle, it's going to match them up against any random player in the team through RNG. This player and this player are similar in GP. This player, you might get a level 10 dude up against level 85, or you may get a level 85 up against level 10 alternatively. The randomness of this, it makes it a little bit more interesting. It means that the defensive team has to really say, listen, okay, Bobby, you're great, mate, but your level 72 bounty hunters aren't going to do stuff on this, so let's leave it for our Revens and our level 85 boys. Sure, we're only going to have 30 teams on defense, but those 30 teams are going to have a better chance of holding out than these teams here. But alternatively, it may even just be an idea to put on the level 72 teams, just do a little bit of damage, because in between rounds, so if you win the first battle would be for damage. And if you won the first battle, you'd go into a second battle. Now, on the second battle, you'd keep the amount of damage you'd have done to you, but your cooldowns would be reset for things like Held by Hatred and Annihilate, and your turn meter would be reset down to 0. Sort of like, as if it was an infiltration team going into the enemy ship, going through, they engage the first security team, they take out the first security team, they've taken a bit of damage, but they keep moving, they engage the second team, and start all over again. Now, the point of the second battle is for intelligence. So, you'd be able to if you are able to beat your enemy on the second battle, it's not guaranteed, but there is a chance that you can gain intelligence on the enemy's ship, or alternatively, disable a subsystem, which can be an absolute game changer. So in the opening round of the battle, you'll go into the enemy ship and it'll say you can target the enemy shields. If you hit the enemy shields, you have a chance to bring down the shields, and if you bring down the shields, it's basically game over, unfortunately. You'd also be able to target the Bacta, as mentioned before, the laser cannons, the turbo lasers, pretty much everything except for the starfighters, really, with a chance to disable them, or alternatively gain enemy intel, which shows how much charge the enemy guild has got onto their subsystems, or in the amount of players that have declared attacks, how many ships have been launched, that sort of thing, just so that your guild as a whole can gauge where the enemy fleet's at. Now, this is just an idea, but I've been thinking of a way to use sim tickets in this event, since there's currently no real use for them. I don't know about most players, but I've currently got over 46,000, close to 47,000 in the bank, just gathering dust. Thanks to the CG reward method, this is definitely not a complaint by any means, but I have more tickets than I could ever use. That's why I feel that there's an interesting way to use them for this event. So for 1,000 tickets, you can bypass an enemy, dealing no damage to their team, and dealing 50% less damage to the enemy ship if you use it in either the first or the second battle. If it's used for a second time, so if you go bypass 1, bypass 2, uh, you have a chance of disabling the system, put down pretty much near 0, and deal 90% less total damage. So if you go skip, you're doing 10% damage, which would be bugger all. Alternatively, you can eliminate an enemy team. So let's say there's that one team of defense that's just holding no matter what your guild throws at them. You know, Boss Double Zeta that just isn't budging, or a Kylo Ren unmasked wall team. You guys know the ones. Those teams are just absolutely crazy. Hold 8 teams before they even lose one character. For 10,000 sim tickets, yeah, 10,000, I know, you can knock them out. Taking the team out and putting them at a 4-turn cooldown, which can't be brought back by Backdoor. This would be an interesting way to add a sort of, you know, strategic element. Makes it a genuine choice for you as an individual player. Do you use your 10,000 sim tickets that you've earned, which, you know, you earn quite a few a day, but, you know, 10,000, that's weeks worth of effort to build up that number just to take out one character. Do you do that for your guild, or do you try to do the battle and see if you can actually just win on your own merit? Or do you even not have enough time? You know, there might only be 30 seconds left in the round. You may have to use those 10,000 tickets. But just to wipe out one team, it really comes down to it. Do you just skip them for the 1,000? It's just one of those things that you really need to think about, and it really makes the game more of a thinking about the guild. Like, at the moment, I don't really think about my guild past, you know, oh, this guy needs this gear item. Oh, I've got, you know, 20 of those spare. He can have, you know, 2, whatever. I don't really care. And but like, you don't think, oh, you know, Johnny only needs 10 more shards of General Kenobi, so I'll let him do more damage on the tank. You just go, nope, tank's mine. Let's get my rewards. So one of the main reasons I really think this event would be great as well is it gives us an idea of where clans stand. So at the moment, I don't really know if there is a good way to see how guilds are ranked overall, but as far as I know, there isn't one. Territory battles don't really provide results other than your guild's better than this one other guild, and I'd love to know how the different ranks go. I don't know, it's probably just my competitive nature, but in my actual shard, the top 10 guys are usually from this guild called an Enterprising Starship. I'm really curious to see how these guys are actually ranked, because they seem like a pretty good ranking lot of guys, you know. They're constantly taking out at least the top 10 for the entire guild. And so it would be interesting to see if I've just gotten really unlucky and just got matched with, you know, their 10 absolute god players, or if they've got a full group of 50 guys who, you know, would go through and come first in the guild event. So this is the basic layout of battles. I haven't included any of the maths in this video, but all the information is on the wiki page, which, as I mentioned, is in the description below. And other people's Legions of War videos you can also check out. As I said, Revan the Legend does some absolutely fantastic content on this. And assuming that CG just doesn't do their own thing, which I'd be also fine with, like, I just really love this event, and any form that they really want to bring into it, it would be just great to see how they could incorporate this into the game, you know, boosting up guild interactivity, boosting up, you know, guild relations, because, you know, you're having to talk with your guild a lot more than you normally would. I like the way that we used to do it in Force Collection was we had a Facebook group that we actually had built specifically for the purpose of Legions at War, just because of how much communication you'd need, you know, on the spot. The in-game chat just wasn't fast enough, and it wouldn't come up enough. So, you know, having that ability for the message just pop down, and you can just see quickly, you know, attack shields now, things like that. It makes clan interactivity just so much more relevant to the game, which I feel is a big part of why people play a guild-based game. Now, this is just a suggestion, but it would be a really fun way for the CG to bring this into effect. And as I said before, with the whole reward system, I think would be an interesting way to introduce 12 new characters. As I mentioned, you know, Admiral Yularen, Killian, General Kalani, and Trench. The way I'd sort of structure the prizes is to have it as these characters be the rewards. For every win that you get 10 shards. So, if you win all 12 rounds, you get 10 shards per win, you get 120 shards. If this did become a monthly event, even if you won every single battle, to get all these characters would take 3 years, which it may sound a bit daunting, but also kind of adds a fun little element to it. Do you guys, like, as a guild, you know exactly where all the other players are, pretty much, assuming that no new players join, because you guys have all been earning them at the same rate, because you guys have all been together winning, 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 using the same ship, using all the same things. So it's different to the whole, oh, I've got to try and beat out insert name here because he always comes first and I still didn't have my General Kenobi unlocked. You guys are all unlocking, at the stage that you won 3 months in a row. You got your 360 shards, so 30 can go into the shard shop. You've got all 50 players going bam, 7 stars. 7-star Granny Leia, 7-star General Hux, and in a year you're getting 4 iconic characters that I could see having some real fun use in arena and maybe even in ship battles, as these flagships could be that you're earning shards for through however means CG could introduce. You'd have them also be unlocked at the individual player level at the same sort of rate, so that players could use them in the ship v ship battles, which would give us a lot more flagship options. Anyway, guys, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and please like this video, subscribe for more upcoming content, and comment any ideas, changes, or tips that you think would make lore a better event, or indeed any other fun way to boost guild interactivity. I'd love to hear you guys' opinions, so drop it down in the comment section below, and I'll hopefully discuss it in a future video. But in the meantime, this has been Zanik, going out to conquer the galaxy.